right, we are in and we are live. It's Amanda Patterson. I am here today. I am excited to be here with Rachel Needle.
Hi,
And
everyone.
we are going to be doing these lives for about an hour today. We'll see how, close to an hour we go. And we're going to be here over now the next 7 weeks. Around this time, doing some really cool stuff for you, for our group. We're excited, and we're just going to jump right into our topic today, which is, the finances of a smart practice. So we're excited to both be talking about money. This is a hot topic. It's something that either makes people really excited or really uncomfortable, or some variation between there. And so I guess I'm excited to be talking about it, though, I've had to work through my own money things, and I'm sure we'll, jump on there. I will be answering any questions, and so will Rachel. So if you have questions for us, please comment, and even if you're watching this on the replay, we'll try to go back and answer any questions that you have. So Rachel, welcome.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here as well. I think this is a topic that a lot of people struggle with, because as mental health professionals, we get really good at one thing, and we're not always business people, which is what we're here to do, is to help people become businessmen, men and women, right? So it's important, because we cannot have a smart practice without understanding the finances of it. And, moving into and growing your practice can be really scary, and finances and money is one of those reasons. And as you mentioned, we all have our money stuff, right? We all have our money conversations that have come from sometime, probably when we were young, probably how our parents handled or talked about money. And so it comes up for a lot of people. So I think it's a great topic, and one that really is necessary for us to be talking about.
So, when we laid out what we wanted to do for these lives, what I love is that we decided to just start with starting a private practice, and then we went right into finances, where I think intuitively a lot of people would have thought, let's do marketing, right? So that you can bring in clients to your practice. But I think it's really important to talk about money, because no matter what stage you're at. So, a lot of people in this group may be already past the starting phase, which, we still have to talk about money at that time. And at every angle, I think it's really important to talk about money, especially now during this pandemic. It's really important to be talking about finances, because I think a lot of people are really panicked. So we are really going to be talking from the position of starting a private practice, what you need to do and how you can really scale up. But I think money talks are things that need to be happening at a regular basis in your private practice, whether that's just once a year when you meet with your accountant, or on a regular basis when you do some kind of accounting or key performance indicator tracking or something.
And it's important, because I think even if those people that already have a practice, right? Even those that have had a practice for quite some time might not be thinking of all the things that we're going to be talking about, right? So sometimes you have to reevaluate your system or how you do things, and begin different strategies and different processes to make sure that you can scale up and thrive. So I think just, moving right in, I think the first thing is that a lot of people, when they go into private practice, they're thinking about just themselves. So for a lot of people, they don't even think to start a business. And we talked a little bit about structures, so I won't talk about that. But in terms of bank accounts, you should have your personal bank account, which most of you already have, or all of you, but you should also have a separate business or practice bank account, at least one. And I think we're going to get into talking later about how we actually think you should have more than that. But you should at least have a business bank account that's separate from your personal one. And this is so that you can start to track your finances and just have finances going into one place, so that you can do your write-offs through that account, so that you can track all your expenses, so that you know what you make, and that it is separate from your personal, where you'll have to pay, again, we'll get into self-employment taxes a little bit in the, at the end.
So I know I've said this before. I say it all the time. I say it in my lives. I say it everywhere. You need an accountant. it's really important. This is your best friend in your business, is your accountant, because they're going to really help you to set up that structure of your business and then let you know what you can and can't write off. I don't think we really want to go down a rabbit hole of what you can and can't write off, but there are going to be a lot of things that you can write off. And depending on the kind of practice that you have, that's really going to be advantageous for you to do those things because, well, you want to pay taxes. You want to pay sort of like an appropriate amount of taxes. You don't want to pay too many taxes and you don't want to pay too little taxes, because if you pay too many taxes, you're going to be unhappy. And then if you pay too little taxes, you're going to be unhappy because they're going to come and get it anyway. So the first thing that I would say when doing your practice is that you really want to get comfortable with the idea of paying taxes and that you want to set aside money for taxes. Rachel was talking about different accounts. You may want to put aside money in a separate tax account, okay? Because you want to get used to pulling that money on a regular basis. When you have a business, you do need to pay quarterly taxes so that you're not penalized at the end of the year. The thing about quarterly taxes is that quarter comes up way faster than you can imagine, okay? It comes and it comes quick. And you want to have money set aside for that.
And so, you know, as Amanda was talking about, having separate bank accounts, so having your business account, then having a tax account allows you to prepare for when you have to do quarterly taxes. And what I tell people is, you know, put away, take a percentage, and I say, you know, 30%, because worst case scenario, you have some money left over and then you're really happy, right? You know, or depending on how much you make, and put it into that tax account. And that will help if you're operating as a sole practitioner and you're not an S corp, which we spoke a little bit about last time. When you're an S corp, you could be you know, paying yourself payroll, which will take out taxes. So if you're not doing that and you just have an account, have a separate tax account that you're putting aside a percentage of every check that you take for yourself from that account.
And depending on like the method that you follow, like we're familiar with the Profit First method, which is you want to take 50% to pay yourself, 30% for your expenses, 15% for your taxes, and 5% for your profit. And you can do separate accounts for those. When you're first starting though, that might look different. Where Rachel said 30%, that might make sense initially, or it might not make sense initially. If you're working in part-time in your practice and you are seeing clients on the side and you still have a W-2, you're probably going to need way less taxes. That first year that you go from having any kind of W-2 steady income from an employer into private practice, you may want to save closer to 30%, because you're really not going to know. And it also depends, like in Florida, Rachel and I would say we are lucky. We don't have a state income tax. So we don't have to prepare for that. So if we did have a state income tax, I would be putting away the 15% for my federal taxes, and then I would be putting away another percentage for my state income tax. So that's again why you want to talk to an accountant, because you really want to know these things. But you want to really not just do this willy-nilly. You want to have percentages that you're at least working towards in terms of paying yourself, paying taxes, and paying your expenses, and having some profit left over at the end.
And so Amanda mentioned Profit First. So Mike Michalowicz, I think that's how you pronounce it, is fantastic. I actually just interviewed him, and we're going to be giving that interview as part of our course. But he talks about the power of allocations, right? So that's what sort of Amanda was talking about, that concept that you have to allocate a certain amount of money based on your percentages into different accounts. So it's a great book, Profits First, and he actually just came out with a new book as well that, you know, it's a really big, it talks a lot about, it was really something that revolutionized my practice for me. It really made it doable when I read it. So I definitely recommend taking a look at it.
I'm going to talk about how this would look. Maybe I'll take paper. Let's see how this goes as I have paper. So for those of you who are just starting out, and let's say you're charging $100 a session, we're just going to go, I like to do nice clean numbers so I don't lose anybody. All the therapists now are going to be like, goodbye, you're doing math, I'm done. Anytime I try to do math with people, they're like, no, thank you. If you are seeing 10 clients, So that would be 10 clients a week. You're just, you're new to this, you're private pay. That's $1,000 a week. And then nice clean numbers, that's $4,000 a month. So I'm doing my math on my paper. So if you were doing an exact profit first model, you would pay yourself $2,000 a month. That's 50%. So 50% is half. Then you would pay, your goal would be to have 30%, which would be your expenses. So that would be $1,200. So this is really important when you're looking at things like rent, right? Like people are like, how much should I pay for rent? Is this a reasonable amount to pay for rent? Should I get my own office or should I rent from somebody? You really want to take a look at reasonably, how many clients would you be seeing? How many hours a week would you be working? What would you be charging? And what would your gross be for the month? So you can start to play with some of these numbers. Then from a tax perspective, 15% of taxes, so 10% would be 400, so it's 600 in taxes, and then 5% is for your profit, which would be 200. So does that equal out? That equals out to be $4,000. I did good math.
Nice job.
So then you could say, can I live off of $2,000 a month if my taxes are paid and my expenses are paid? Business expenses, not personal expenses. Now you get an idea of how many clients you need to see. If you want to make $10,000 a month take home, you need to multiply all of this by 5. So you're not going to really be able to see 50 clients a week. So you're going to have to up the amount that you charge, for instance, or look at some other streams of income. So that's how you can start to answer, how am I going to be able to make this amount of money that I want to make?
So in doing so, you want to keep a spreadsheet of your expenses. And Man and I have a great one where you look at what are your expenses, if rent's included. For some of us, especially, now might decide to do online therapy, and some of us have been doing that for a while. And so there is no rent, right? You may actually get a tax benefit because you can write off the room in your house or your apartment or wherever you live. It's a tax write-off as if it's rent. So you want to keep a spreadsheet. It'll look at your rent, your insurance, your phone, marketing, advertising, taxes, etc. Then you know what your expenses are going to be what they're going to be each month. And then you can decide based on that what you need to make to take home what you want to make. So if in this scenario, your expenses and everything comes to, Amanda, what was that number? 1,200 with taxes?
1,200.
Okay, 1,200, and you want to make 10,000 a month, then you know that, well, you're going to have to up your taxes, that you have to make, $3,500 a week, essentially. I'm not as good at math right now in my head. And so to do that, let's say I only wanted to work 20 hours a week. Then I have to look at what do I have to charge. So I charge $250 an hour, right? So for 4 hours, I'll make $1,000. Again, that's before any expenses or anything. So you have to go back and look at what are your expenses, what you want to bring home, and as a result, how much you need to charge and how many hours you need to work to do that. Another model for doing that is to look at all of those things, but first look at how many hours you want to work. So if I know that I only want to work 20 hours a week, then I need to figure out what do I need to charge per hour to be able to do that.
I think that's great. I'm going to jump on and see if anybody has asked any questions yet of us, and then we'll get going. I'm going to make a comment. We're here answering your questions. Okay. So we're going to not go too far down the rabbit hole of, well, Rachel, you charge $250 an hour in my area. I could never do that. Or I take insurance or this or that or that or this. We'll get to that. I think we're not going to probably talk about marketing strategies and those models yet, because I think that there are a lot of intricacies about that. We really want to talk about money and get you comfortable talking about money, and comfortable with the idea of either, I like to couch it in 2 ways, either charging $250 an hour if that is your goal, or taking in, I said this the other day, 5,000, 10,000, 50,000. How would you feel if your practice took in $50,000 a month? Now, granted, there's going to be expenses. Granted, you're going to have, you know, and like anything, you know, the more the more, you know, revenue you have, the more expenses you're going to have. So just be prepared for that. That your expenses are the more people you see, the larger your marketing budget might have to be. Some things are going to be fixed and some things are going to be variable. So if you remember, you know, those terms from your statistics class, something's fixed, your rent may be fixed, right? Your rent is $800 a month. That's never going to change. Something variable might be your Google AdWords campaign. If you know, one month you really want to go hard and that you know, put a budget of 500, and the next month you're like, I'm going to scale back, I'm full. You put down to 200. So there are some that are not always going to be the same exact every month, but again, because you're tracking, we definitely recommend that you track. Yes. Track. Use a tracker, use Excel sheets, use Google Sheets, use QuickBooks, so that you get an understanding of what your general expenses are. And I do recommend that you start tracking from the beginning. I don't know where they're at now, but they're on a jump drive somewhere. I don't know if in this office or my other office, my very first, you know, Excel sheets of, you know, my revenue, my expenses, and I remember those sheets, and I put my blood, sweat, and tears into those sheets. And so, you know, I don't know, Rachel, what you think about tracking, or if you want to piggyback up of anything else there. Yeah,
I think it's hugely important. And so Excel sheets are one way to do it. Usually when we start out, right, that's a really great way to do it. I recommend that using QuickBooks, and just getting a general idea of how to use it is great. And then I'm a big fan of hiring somebody to do things, right? So having someone keep that up for you, but you can easily do it yourself too. It is not that difficult, actually. It's a really cool program. And with QuickBooks, you can run reports. You can do different things to see how much you're making and understand where money is going and how much you made that month, et cetera, based, you know, from different things. So it's a really great tool to have. So I highly recommend doing that as well to track.
What I like about using QuickBooks is it gives you not just like every month, but it gives you a year, and then it gives you quarters. So then you can also plan your taxes. Like this quarter for everybody may be very low. Like that April, May, June may be very, I was like, wait, what are the quarters? Might be a lower quarter, right? And so we've already prepared and planned my taxes that I'm going to pay for next year based on last year's numbers. This year's numbers may be less, right? And so because there's something going on, and so you'll be able to understand what is happening for your business on a regular basis by tracking. And then I'm a big fan of planning your business year to year. I always tell this story. Is it okay if I tell a story, Rachel?
Sure.
So when I went into private practice full time, and year to year, my revenue doubled. And I was like, wow, this is some good stuff, awesome. Right? Yeah, I was like, this is good. But what I realized is that I wasn't going to be able to do it again unless I dramatically shifted my business model, right? It wasn't going to be like I was just going to be able to now, you know, charge all of my clients double. I was pretty much at my capacity. I had a full-time practice, and I wasn't interested in charging my clients double. So what I was interested in was starting a group practice. And that's how I had been able to then double my income again, the revenue, because I was able to look at those numbers. I look at December's numbers. That just happens to be when I look at my numbers, because it gives me a good idea. So if you have your numbers readily available to you, you will be able to start making decisions. You will be able to pull out your business plan, see if your numbers align with your business plan, see where you can go with those numbers. And then if you start making, for instance, a lot more profit, it might be time for you to think about things like purchasing a building, you know, investing in a high quality treatment modality like sex therapy, for instance. You might decide to get your PhD with Rachel, right? So you can start to make some really, you know, I was like a good plug for you there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll pay you later.
You might be able to, you know, start to make really big decisions about your practice in a way that if you weren't tracking, you wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, it's really important to be able to pay attention to this, right? Because it gives you information. The more information you have, the better decisions you can make. And as Amanda said, like one of the things that I decided to do about a year and a half ago was just that. My lease was up on my large, you know, I have a group practice as well. I had a really large, great space. My lease was up. They wanted to raise the rent even more. They raised it every year since I signed that lease 5 years before. I started thinking, well, I can give, you know, away $6,500 a month to somebody else, or I could buy my own space and be paying essentially myself, so that eventually after, you know, 10 years or so, I then just have this investment. So if I sell it before then, I make most of my money back plus some. If I wait, then I make 100, you know, at least 100% back most likely. So I decided to do that. And honestly, I pay less more on my mortgage and CAM, which is common area maintenance that you have to pay. Essentially, it's like HOA fee. Than I would have on that rent. So I pay actually half of that, and I own the space. So, you know, you have to start to think smarter about money in terms of how you can do that. Now, I get that a lot of people aren't in that situation yet. And if you are, awesome, and we can help you kind of get past that. And if you're not, we can help you get to that point. So it is just about the numbers and working them and trying to figure out what you need to do to get to the point that the place that you want to be. And maybe you have no interest in getting to that place where you buy a suite or a building. You don't have to, but we want to help you get to where you do want to be financially.
So we got a couple of questions coming up. Somebody said on average, so it's Vanessa, on average, after all overhead costs, what should be the target reimbursement per client? So I would say that really it's so hard to give exact numbers because it it really is dependent on a lot of things. If you are in an area where rent is astronomical, if you are in San Francisco, if you are in New York City, if you are in, you know, even like maybe downtown Miami, right? Like these large metropolitan areas, I'm imagining that your reimbursement rate needs to be a lot higher to be able to cover the cost. And that at the same time, clients are going to be much more comfortable doing private pay, you know, those prime time dollars. If you are in an area, maybe rent is lower, maybe you accept insurance, then that's going to look really different. I can run through some numbers, but Rachel, I want to hear from you, and then I'll run through some numbers maybe.
Well, I think that varies for everybody, right? You have to decide, what do you want to make? So if, you know, some people are okay with making less, right? Their cost of living is lower. They have a partner or partners that contribute. They don't need to make a certain amount of money for whatever reason. So it depends on what you want to make. I mean, in terms of percentages, you know, you want, I think when we talked about the different percentages, it was about 25%. Amanda, I think you
30%
said 30%.
Yeah.
So of what you were making, that's going to go out, right? So you want to think about it that way. So whatever number you charge, about 30% of that is going to be going out to other things. Depending, again, that can vary based on where you live and if you have a higher rent, if you are renting, or what other expenses you have. So start by making a sheet, like a spreadsheet, of all of your expenses, right? That's a really good first start. So all of your expenses, and include taxes in that, and then go through and think about, again, how many hours you want to work. And that'll help you decide how much you need to charge, and it'll tell you what percentage of what you're making is going towards your expenses.
And I think this is a good time to talk about prioritizing for your particular practice. Now, there are some things, like I will be like transparent. When I moved into my first like group office space, I got used furniture. We got things from Target. I pulled things together, and it wasn't that aesthetics at that point were a huge priority to me. And so if you know me personally, I'm a very practical person, so I have to really push myself around that. So the first time around, that wasn't a priority, so the expenses were not anywhere near as high. Then the second time around, when I went into a larger space, aesthetics were really important. We got higher quality pieces. I got cute furniture. I got cute desks. It started to look different. It started to feel different. And so the cost that it took to go into that larger space was much more. And that was a priority for me at that time. I know some group practice owners who do their own billing. So they save themselves, like, I don't know, I pay my biller sometimes like $2,000 a month, right? Like for billing, credentialing, other things. For me, that $2,000 a month is well worth my headache. And so that's just priorities of your business. So if you don't already also have a business plan, you want to go ahead and make sure you have a business plan so you know what the priorities are for your business. If you, for instance, I'm just going to use sex therapy because Rachel's like in front of me. I can't think of anything else right now besides that. If you wanted
what
to
do you
really,
think about sex when you see me?
I see Rachel, I'm like, sex, this is it. So if I wanted to really charge a prime rate in my area, and I knew that one way to do that was through sex therapy, I would get the certification, right? And I would put the money into that. And my expenses for that 1 year or 2 years that it took for all the supervision and all the CEUs, my expenses would be higher. And so I might be able to take home less money, but in the long run, that would make, it would make sense. So I think it's so hard to answer these questions. Sometimes I see them all the time in my Facebook group, our Facebook group, and other people's Facebook groups, because it's so specific to your needs.
And I think, just kind of piggybacking on that a little bit, I want to talk about for people that haven't yet started a practice or early on, some people just, debate with themselves, like, should I take out a loan? That is a very personal decision as well. I was always a fan of, I don't, after student loans, like, I don't want to be in any more debt, like, ever. So what I did is I started and I waited till I got to the point where I could open my group without having to borrow money, right? That was very important to me because I knew what having this weight of, the $250,000 in loans had over me, right? Like it like destroyed me. So I needed to wait till I could afford to do that. Not everybody has to do that. There's nothing wrong with taking out a small loan. Again, as long as you're prepared. And you have in your expenses on that spreadsheet when you're figuring things out, your loan payment. So, you have to decide if that's something you want to do. Do you want to start or do you want to wait to do something like that? You also have to incorporate, do you have help in expenses, right? Do you have money put aside already? Do you have family help, which some people do? Do you have a partner's help? Like, right? For me, I was single. I did not have that extra income. So I had made decisions based on that. Right? I can't count on any other money. I can't depend on it, at the time that I was starting. So all of those things are important. You can take more risk when you do have a partner, let's say, that can carry you for a little while you wait to make money, right? Then you have a different opportunity and option than maybe somebody else does. So look at yourself personally and what it is that you have access to and make a decision based on if you want to borrow, using that information.
Okay, so there's a couple more questions. The way these comments come in are funny.
I can't see them, so.
Yeah, there was a question about tracking, but the way that this is coming in is a little funny, so I'll go back and, get back on there in a moment. I'll jump back on. So I think that, when we talk about money, that all things are possible, right? Like that's really like my perspective about things. Like, I think that people who accept insurance can have a really great, like, lucrative practice. I think people who are private pay can have a really great lucrative practice. I think that if you want to have, workshops, you can have a really great lucrative practice. I think like the work that therapists need to do is to really get comfortable with that. And not in a, like, yes, law of attraction is a thing and it's fun, and but in a way that you're comfortable with talking about money. You're comfortable with knowing where your finances are, whether they're coming and going. I know a lot of therapists like to put their head in the sand sometimes about finances, which is a very common, coping strategy for stress. But when you're trying to build a business, I think it's really important to be head on, especially I think what people, that was part of the question that came up, was paying yourself when, versus just taking a draw. So when things happen, if you're a little bit of a catastrophizer like I am, like, you want to be prepared for things like a pandemic that you now have to, put all, you need to know your numbers in order to apply for some of these loans and some of these grants. And so that is one benefit. So going back to the different types of businesses, that is one benefit of paying yourself a salary, and having yourself as a W-2 employee so that now your business has an employee and that it shows W-2. And there, again, these are things you need to talk to your accountant on how to do that. But I do pay myself every 2 weeks, just like I'm a W-2 employee. I pay taxes every single month. I pay the employees and the employer portion of taxes. And then I pay taxes every quarter. And then I, pay taxes every year, because that's just the life. The thing I would say is that you want to pay taxes, and you want to be excited about paying taxes, because if you pay taxes, that means you made more money.
Yes.
And it doesn't always feel that great to do that, but if you do, I follow Profit First for my taxes. I put 15% away every single month based on what happened in my business. And we were prepared. I was prepared for taxes this year. I have to put a little more away now this coming year again, but it's all relative. And so if you prepare for these things, you won't be probably blindsided versus putting your head in the sand.
And it'll also help you to prepare for other things. So I think part of this model too talks about that if you know that your 10-year anniversary is coming up and you want to go, my cousin was talking about going to Italy for hers. You're supposed to be there now. And so, they had a separate bank account for that, right? A separate bank account to prepare for that. So it allows you, preparing in that way allows you to be realistic about what money you have, what money you can afford to put aside. And that way you can reach your goal a lot more quickly. So as Amanda said, paying yourself allows for taxes get taken out. So it's a big plus. And at times like this, not that we hope this happens again, it is much easier to track. It was, people that had their own businesses that did take a salary could apply a lot more easily and earlier than other people. And so they were more likely to get some of that funding. So again, hopefully this doesn't happen again. So that's not relative, but it is a really good option. And it does help you to operate more like a business, because that way you're not just having this money and wondering, oh, I guess I could take a draw now. Oh, I could take some money now, in which case it doesn't even out. And you always are, I think in abundance rather than blanking on the word, but what's the word? Opposite of abundance. Sorry.
Deprivation,
deficit, whatever. Anyway, I like to think in abundance. There will always be money there. There is always money there. And so you have to get to that point. And to get to that point, you have to know your numbers. So I know that I keep going back to that. I'm happy to share spreadsheets with you. But you have to go back to that to be able to get to the place that you want to be. Because if you don't have the information in front of you in that way, you can't make a rational and good decision.
And I think that's the thing about private practice, is that we have to make rational and good decisions. And by having a lot of information, it's really going to make a difference in your practice, right? You're not going to just make an emotional decision. If we all made emotional decisions, if those of you that are watching that are working for agencies, you would just like up and quit your job like tomorrow, because we've all been there. We know what it looks like to work for an agency for the most part, and we would have just quit. One piece of advice I have for you is, if you work for an agency and you're thinking about going into private practice, and you are going to do like a lot of people do, is work at your agency and work at your private practice, is that I say first year, because I think it takes about a year, depending on your circumstances, to build up to leave your agency job. Again, if you don't have finances from somebody else, or you have some limitations in your scheduling, don't save up all of your money that you're supposed to pay yourself, right? Or pay off debts that you have, so that when you go leap into private practice, you won't have, one, you'll have an emergency fund for your practice already, or you'll have some kind of cushion, and two, you won't have a lot of debts. I understand you may not be able to pay off your student loan debts. Certainly didn't do that, but really by positioning yourself that first year, if you're dipping your toe into private practice and doing that is a really great, strategy. If you need your income, that's also completely understandable. Like I said, I honor everybody's journeys. I don't think it has to be just one way. If you decide you want to jump right into private practice, then yeah, again, your priority is to pay yourself. So that's going to be a higher priority. You may need to push off some things that, some people buy really nice furniture or do trainings right away. Again, it's going to go back to prioritizing your practice and prioritizing your money, just like you do probably with your personal finances.
And this is why we named this kind of series Smart Practice, right? This is finances for a smart practice. We talked about building a smart practice. Next week, we're going to talk about getting clients for your smart practice, because Amanda and I are both very practical. And I know there's a lot of different groups that you can go to where they'll tell you, leave your agency job and build this, dream practice, right? Amanda and I have built dream practices, right? Amanda has her second location now of a big practice, right? We can help you. We can help you do that, without a doubt. However, I do not tell people just quit your job. Most people have families, right? A lot of people don't have a second income. If you have that to depend on and it makes sense for your family or your unit to do that, then absolutely do it. Walk away from the agency job, spend all your time and energy and build that dream practice while knowing that you're not going to end up living on the streets or not eating, right? But if you don't have that luxury, right? Even if you have a partner and there isn't extra income from that partner or partners, right? Make sure that you are being smart about the transition, right? So start building a practice while still having that steady income, and then slowly start to transition as you see that there is an end in sight where you start to make close to what you need to make to live. So I could sensationalize this and say, hey, leave your private practice. Tomorrow I'll make you, $300,000 a year. Nobody can do that. I guarantee if Amanda and I can't do that, nobody can do that. So be smart, and we can help you, walk you through that if you're questioning, what do I need to be able to get there?
Yeah, and I think that a big thing about getting there is, again, getting comfortable with the money, getting comfortable with what you want, and really putting yourself out there. Like Rachel and I are putting ourselves out there right now, doing this, answering your questions. I'm going to jump on and see if there are some more questions. Let's see. Would you write yourself a check, or would you just pay yourself, or would you payroll W-2? So that's a great question. I kind of do it's like a mix of both. I worked with my accountant to, I personally take a set amount every 2 weeks. I think I've been taking this set amount for a few years now. I might have upped it at one point, but it's been pretty consistent. So I pay the same amount in taxes every single month. So I write myself a check every 2 weeks, or how I did a transfer the other day, but you get the idea. I write myself a check, and that the amount is already accounted for the taxes, because there are different, you have to pay, just like on your regular W-2, you have to pay FICA, you have to pay Medicare, I forget all the things you have to pay, but yeah, Social Security, thank you. You have to pay that, and you have to pay the employer's portion. So I worked with my accountant. So to make it easy on myself, I just pay myself the same amount every 2 months or every 2 weeks. And then if I take distributions, because I have an S Corp, that varies depending on a couple of things, like the priorities of my family, or the fruits of my labor in my practice. And so I try to take a consistent amount from that as well, but there's a lot of variabilities that come with that. But I do pay myself a check every 2 weeks. You can hire a company like Gusto. I think you can even do it through QuickBooks.
Who do you use?
I don't use anybody for payroll, because I just calculate the payroll myself, because it's really, because I have independent contractors. So I just started using a company called Veem. It's VEEM.com to do wire transfers for them. It's like the easiest thing ever. I was writing my independent contractors checks, and they may be watching this, but I hated writing them checks. It was just so annoying to have to write out 15 checks. I hated it. And then I started using Veem over the last 2 weeks, and I'm like, this is the best thing to ever happen to me. So you can use some of those resources. But if you are thinking about having a group practice with W-2 employees, you definitely want to look into something like Gusto. ADP is another one.
And as Amanda said, so pay yourself that set salary every month or every 2 weeks, like Amanda does, or even every week if you want. But that doesn't mean that you can't take more money, right? That's just your pay. So you can then take more money if you needed it or if you wanted it. That's just what your payroll is, your taxes are taken care of, et cetera. It's consistent. You can count on it. It's going to be in there. You can take it no matter what.
Yep. And that's, all of that is like in my calculation. I'm like a spreadsheet queen. I keep a spreadsheet that has like how much I'm going to take for my tax, how much is going to go for taxes once a month, and then in that separate account, and then my pay, all of my payments to all of my contractors, and it's all in a spreadsheet. It's all in my head too, but it's definitely on a spreadsheet. So that's why I said like having spreadsheets is really, really important. And then because then when you go to do things like pay yourself, you will be able to understand how much you can pay yourself. And if you have a bad month, will you still be able to pay yourself? You're going to have variabilities in your months. It's not going to always consistently be the same. Depending on your marketing efforts and the climate and all of these different things, your months may look different, but I really think like looking at quarters is going to be really important. Okay. Oh, yes. Somebody said deficit. Thank you. Did you start off as a solo practice before a group practice? So yes, I actually joined a group practice. I was really paying rent, but it was a group practice that I joined. I absolutely started out as a solo practice. And then it's a really funny story on how I started my group practice. I never even wanted to go into private practice, nor did I ever think about joining or starting a group practice. So I had a supervisee. She was wonderful. She's in this group. And she had asked me like, oh, like, should I rent space? Like, I'm getting ready to be licensed. Should I rent space from here? And I'm like, huh. Like, it wasn't a bad idea, but I'm like, man, like, I would love to work with her, right? She was a great clinician, like, and I was like, I want to do this. Like, and she was really like the inspiration for me. I should like send her a little text. I'm going to send her a text and say thank you. But to start a group practice, like that's really because I started to realize like there were clinicians I wanted to work with. I didn't want to work with everything. I didn't want to work with everybody. And that I was going to need a team of people to start to refer out to once we really started building. And that's how I started my group practice. And then I started the same thing. I started renting to people. And then I transitioned everybody over to independent contractors. What has been, and I'll just talk about this for 30 seconds. What's been helpful about having independent contractors versus renters is that because the draw is different, I've been able to do more things with the practice, move into a bigger office, get nicer furniture, buy trainings, buy snacks, like have water, have more amenities because it's independent contractors. If you have W-2 employees, you may be able to offer even more like vacation time, sick time, these kinds of things.
And think about it at a time like this, if you had just renters, right?
Yes, if I had just renters, they would have been like, bye, see you. And I'd be like, okay, I guess I'm paying this rent myself. But now with my independent contractors, they're still paying me their portion because we're still offering the electronic health record, we're offering support, we're offering all the things that we normally offer other than maybe a physical location.
Right. And I did the same thing. I started out, I actually went into private practice as soon as I graduated. So I did my postdoc in private practice under the supervision of an amazing psychologist who I worked with until recently, actually, even when I had my group practice. So I decided that once I started, I knew that I wanted to open a bigger business. I've always known that, but I started getting call after call for therapist referrals for things that I didn't specialize in and that I didn't feel it was appropriate, or they couldn't afford my fee, and I, wasn't sliding as much anymore because I was so busy. So I just decided I needed a group of clinicians that, I knew were great therapists, that had a range of specialties so that we could meet all the needs in one place, so that families also didn't have to travel to 3 or 4 places to get their whole family's needs met. And my goal was to not turn people away. So I was able to balance the, high private pay and higher SCS clients with both insurance and a low sliding scale fee so that I could feel good, because it was really important to me. It's one of the things that I really wanted to do, is allow people to not get turned away if they couldn't afford it. So I was able to build a successful business even with doing that, which I'm really happy about and proud of. But anyway, I started in private practice and then grew from there. So you don't even have to be full to do that. I knew that I wanted to start a business, which is why I didn't do a traditional postdoc to begin with, Okay,
I'm gonna jump over to the questions. Let's see. No more questions. We can go back if anybody has any questions. As you're watching this on the replay, let us know. I know I need to go back and answer some questions from last time too. I wanted to address something that somebody asked. They had asked how to make $300,000 in private practice. And I thought that was really cool because most people ask the question of how do you make $100,000? It's different whether you're talking about gross or net. Like grossing $100,000 is much, I don't want to use the word easier, but it's just like the next natural level. Like, right. So you need to take in $10,000 a month. You need to see 25 people at $100 a session. You need to see 10 people at $250 a session. That's how you gross $100,000 in a practice. That would be 120, but I like nice, simple math when we're doing those things.
My calculator out.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you were to have a group, or if you have a solo practice, you need like $8,500 a month. Divide that out by how much you charge. Even if you charge $85 a session, right? You have an insurance-based practice with some high, medium, and low paying clients, $8,500 a month. So Rachel, what's 8,500 times 12?
102.
Yep. So now you have a $100,000 practice, right? You see 100 clients a month. That's 25 clients a week. For a lot of people, that's like within their normal range. If you want to see 20 clients a week, then you probably need to go to about 115. If you want to see 30 clients a week, guess what? You can charge, take all of the, $70 insurance rates.
So for me, right, because I charge $250 an hour. If I wanted to make 300, if I wanted to gross 300,000 a year, I would have to see 23 clients on average a week. Right now, when we talk about this, we're now talking about starting a practice, of course, but we also will talk to you about how to diversify your income, right? We want to first help you build a practice and make a lot of money and get to your goal by your one-on-one, right? So your time equals how much money you make, right? After we've done that, or in the process of doing that, we also want to help you get away from that model so that there are ways that you are making money when it is not just your time and you're equal to your time. So we're going to do that as well. But right now, today was about finances of a practice, specifically a private practice. And again, we did talk also about the group as well. One of the other things that I think that, is recommended is, when you have a business and when you have a practice, to try to get to the point where you have at least 6 months of income put away. And maybe I'm being a little, maybe that's a little more than you would do, Amanda, but I think it's a really good idea to have in the bank 6 months worth of expenses just in case.
And one way that you can do that is upping your percentage. So instead of maybe 30%, upping your expenses to 40%, putting 10% away a month, and then having that income or having that reserve fund. That would be one way that you can do that. You may have really great months and that you put away the money for that. And so there's a lot of different ways that, yes, you want to build up, especially if you're really looking to go large, right? In the long run, you really want to go large. You're going to need money for things like furniture, training, life, all of these things. And so you're really going to want to put money, have money put aside for all of these different kinds of things. And again, I think that the difference between grossing, which is like how much your business brings in, and how much you bring in, the net, right, is really different. If you're trying to net $100,000, then your practice needs to bring in $200,000. And that's $200,000 after you pay contractors and those kinds of things. So then now I want you to start like getting your brain spinning of like, how could I bring in $200,000 to my practice? What would that look like, right? And so these are just some things for you to, some fodder for you. Maybe we'll come back on and really talk about at some point, like really how to build large practices. If you're interested in that, please comment below. Let us know if you're looking. A lot of people really want to know, how do I start a practice? How do I make my first couple $1,000? How do I make $100,000? Or if you're interested in 300, 400, 500,000, $1 million, there's $1 million practices out there. Please comment below. If you do follow Profit First, that if your practice is grossing $1 million, that you're not going to be taking 50% of that as the owner. That there is this really cool metric that shows like how much you should be taking. I think it goes down. I don't remember exactly how much, but there are different numbers there. So we can, you know, at some point, if we want to know what you all are interested in. So please ask us questions, comment below. What is it that you need? What do you want to know about? We're going to be here for the next now 6 Mondays. This is our second Monday. Next week, we're going to be talking about marketing. So if you do have marketing questions that you want answered, comment below. We'll kind of incorporate that. We've been taking notes. Rachel and I have been working together. We're excited for this. Rachel, what do you have? What do you have for us?
Yeah, I know this is a lot of information. I know it can be overwhelming. We were trying to get through it quickly, and we can be more practical with our advice in terms of showing you spreadsheets or working through them with you. We're happy to do that. Tell us what you're interested in, and we will go through it more slowly so that you can, you know, again, we want you to build a smart practice. So this is the finance of a smart practice. Be prepared, know what you want, and we'll help you figure out how to get there. Next week, we're going to be talking about getting clients for a smart practice. And again, this is our series of building a smart practice and everything you need to know to thrive in one as well. So thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks, everybody. We're excited for this, and we'll be jumping on next Monday at 3 p.m. All right, everybody, take care.
Bye, thanks.
Bye. Okay.
We're not on Facebook
We're
anymore?
not on. Nope.
That was good.
Yeah. It seemed like a lot of people were watching. Let me go. It seemed like more people were watching this one than the last one. I think like one reason for that is that a lot of people, I'm trying to see if they can tell me how many views this had. Hold on. I think a lot of people are, no, it doesn't tell me how many views. It doesn't matter. But I saw like there were like 20 people.
Did they stay on or did they fall off?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's what I want to see. Let me see if I can go out and look at this from a different screen.
We can get off and just call each other.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.